A few years back, when the uncle of my mother died, my young cousin, 8, cried a lot at the funeral. It took some time, but eventually he calmed down, and his parents went for a little walk with him for some distraction. But then he noticed that his first name was written on one of the tombstones. He mentions it loudly, and one of the bystanders said, "Yeah, it's already reserved for you." He immediately started crying again. My mother-in-law took a photo of a wine glass during the lunch we had after, and she posted it on Facebook. Guess what her caption was? "Life is grand." It was my mother's funeral. Die. It's like proposing at someone else's wedding, just rude. I went to the funeral of a coworker's fiancé. The girl's ex showed up, and as people were lined up to say goodbye, we all witnessed him lean into the coffin and kiss her on the lips. I will repeat myself, the ex-boyfriend of the deceased woman kissed her dead body at her funeral. In front of her fiancé. Her brothers quite literally threw him out. My mom passed 2 days before my first child was born. I didn't get pregnant again till 11 years later, so I was 5 months pregnant with my second child when my father passed. Someone came up to me at the funeral and said to me, "You should stop having kids, it's bad luck for your family." My uncle was pissed about something in my grandmother's will. So during the funeral, he went out to the parking lot and keyed everyone's car. It should be noted, he has severe brain injury from a motorcycle accident that causes him to be constantly angry and paranoid. Still, my aunt crawled into her father's open casket. At my father's funeral, one of my aunts asked my mom when would she get out of the house. My husband went to his great-aunt's funeral, and while they did the little ceremony in the cemetery, great-aunt's granddaughters were all hiding behind a tombstone giggling and doing coke. He handed out his business cards at his stepdaughter's funeral. There was very nearly a fistfight. Not at a funeral but at my auntie's wake, a dude approached my little sister and hit on her. She was 12 years old. My grandpa died. His son, my uncle, went around asking for money to give to his now widowed mother. He collected around $500 USD worth of donations from family, friends, etc. He pocketed it, and my grandma didn't receive shit. A local boy died after being hit by a car while riding his bike. I think he was like 11/12 at the time. His sister, known to all to be very attention-seeking, immediately was doing news interviews, which just seemed odd, considering he had died earlier that day, but whatever, people grieve differently, I suppose. But then at his wake, she took a few photos of him in the casket, and posted it to her public Instagram story. It was super bizarre and just bad taste. The officiant moved the partner of the deceased back a couple of rows, because they weren't family. At least that was their initial reasoning. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the partner being same-sex. I was furious. And then it got worse. The officiant decided to make the entire funeral about mental health, and how everyone should get help. Nothing about the life of the loved one. No celebration of their accomplishments, of the beauty they brought to the world. Nothing. Keep in mind that 80% of the congregation still believed the death was because of physical health reasons. We would have coped with the knowledge, but telling us it was suicide only as a platform for the rest of us to seek help was heartbreaking. Only funeral I've ever rung and complained about. Selfie with the corpse. Not seen but experienced. My cousin's wife was kicking the back of my chair at my granda's funeral. Also carrying on a conversation with my sister, who was supposedly really sad the whole way through the service. For context, I was 14 and my cousin's wife was in her mid to late 30s. Her ex told us about all the great things she did in bed, and what a loss for mankind that is. In present of her boyfriend. My uncle died, and at his funeral my cousin, his son, was crying. Some old-timer uncle came up to him and said, "Stop crying, you're a man, you're embarrassing us." I never wanted to slap someone at a funeral more than at that moment. My nan told my dad at his own father's funeral that her pain was much greater, because she had lost a husband, while he had only lost his dad. As if grief is a competition. She is a shitty person anyway, and not even blood related to us, so we just kinda don't associate anymore. Priest called the deceased full of sin, and refused one of his final requests, that his dog's ashes be buried with him. His son didn't care and snuck in his dog's ashes with his anyways.